Thank you. I've never done this before. Yeah? So let's just keep that in the room here. Otherwise, I'm going to be having a whole big tie collection, Adam. Hello, EIS. Thank you, Adam. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Mark, for the invitation. I have to say, you guys look great for being the world's oldest teacher union. You know? Because that must be all that World Cup energy, you know? And, right? Right? Because you're certainly a union that understands what it takes to win. So, colleagues, it's really great to be with you and to speak to you a little bit about not just describing the world at large, but specifically how we, through Education International, your global federation, are responding and leading at a time when many global organizations are simply too stunned to move or speak. We all know that silence is never an option for the teacher trade union movement, because when you have solidarity in your DNA and the call comes, we meet the moment. Without the transactional assessments that so clearly are front of mind for so many governments around the world right now, who seem paralyzed what Professor Timothy Snyder calls the baby with the bulldozer problem. And by that I mean the deranged US president and his cadre of self-absorbed, authoritarian, grifting, xenophobic, misogynistic, narcissist, fear-mongering, genocidal, techno-broligarchs who have incredible destructive power that they are using to destroy the very guardrails of our very existence right now. But I digress. Just less than 2 years ago, a few thousand of us, representing more than 33 million teachers worldwide, came together at our World Congress in Buenos Aires, where we resolved to do 5 major things that would form the foundation of our strategic plan. We resolved to take what we built with the United Nations high-level panel on the teaching profession and drive the Go Public Fund Education campaign to build power for our profession, for our public education systems, for our people, for our planet, and quite frankly, at a moment when all 4 are under attack. We resolved to elevate and strengthen our profession as the proactive, organized wisdom workers we are, and create a pedagogy of solidarity, a pedagogy that rejected the transactional and centered the relational. I heard you all talking about that in the last session. We were going to specifically respond to the sycophantic, corporate-led, cognitive stunting AI with something pro-human and pro-people and pro-planet. Because no one, and I mean no one, tells us that the future inevitably has already been written. We were resolute that we were going to be in solidarity with our people in all their diversity and defend their human and trade union rights from the exploiters and oppressive extractors and authoritarians, with a determination and commitment to our core values that would unite our movement with purpose. And we were resolute that our planetary boundaries were going to be respected, so that climate justice, democracy, and peace would be core to the life of our schools, our communities, our unions, and our countries. We would teach to know, to do, to be, and to live together, and educate the world that cooperation is what moves us forward. But if Education International were to truly unlock our collective potential, it would require that all our members were equally strong, independent, representative, inclusive, and powerful. These are the pillars of Education International's strategic plan: our profession, our public education, people, planet, and the power to defend them. And every single one of them is under pressure, but we are determined as we began this new chapter of our story in Buenos Aires at our World Congress. And actually, I was in Buenos Aires, that's what that picture is, about 2 months ago, because it was the 50th anniversary of the return of democracy to Argentina, right? This was a time when 30,000 people had been disappeared. But the teacher trade union movements in Argentina have brought out over 1 million people to the streets of Buenos Aires. And I was so proud to be there with the mothers and the grandmothers leading that important march. And when they polled the people in the streets, how do you know this history? Why are you here? 70% of respondents said, because we learned it in school. It matters. So let me go to the profession. So right now, we face a global teacher shortage of 44 million teachers worldwide in primary and secondary education. And when you add early childhood education, that number jumps to 50 million. And yet governments and corporations still imagine that they can replace us with cheaper edtech platforms, with AI chatbots, with content delivery systems. So let me be very clear, and I heard you all saying this. Despite what tech companies and giants and the right-wing governments hope, we cannot and we will not be automated, because education is not transactional. Education is relational and profoundly human. Because what we do is not just information transfer, it is knowledge applied and distilled through our experience, through our values, through our solidarity and relationships. It is, in effect, wisdom in practice. And people once talked about the knowledge economy, but big tech is building and extracting value from the engagement and attachment economy, one that hooks kids on dopamine loops, short-form distraction, and algorithmic manipulation. And teachers are the last line of defense, trying to preserve and create the conditions that make critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and compassionate learning possible. EIS, you are organized wisdom workers, and we need you now more than ever. In 2022, education unions advocated for the United Nations to convene, next slide please, the Transforming Education Summit, recognizing that the teacher shortage was a major global crisis, and they had to create a high-level group of experts to recommend actions. In 2023, next slide please, we launched our Go Public Fund Education campaign to demand that governments fully fund public education and invest in teachers, because that's the best way to ensure quality education for all. And in 2024, we made sure that your insights and experience informed the United Nations recommendations for a strong and resilient teaching profession. The 59 recommendations, and I hope you know this, I hope you have them, they've been translated into 50 different languages around the world. They echo and support our long-standing union demands, and they provide a blueprint for ending the teacher shortage. And in fact, this year, the negotiations are opening for our 1966 ILO UNESCO recommendations on the status of the teaching profession. I want to thank Andrea for agreeing to be an expert on the experts group, representing you. Of 4 experts we have globally, Andrea will be there representing you in that panel, so thank you. And just last year, the first ever UN World Summit on Teachers took place in Chile, hosted by the President of Chile himself, who is famously a friend of teacher unions. And the Santiago Consensus that was adopted at that summit calls for investment in the profession, it calls for social dialogue, and it calls for social dialogue with unions at the table. It's the first ever global international agreement that recognizes the teacher-student relationship as world heritage. In fact, I have a short story that I'd like to tell you that pulls a lot of this together. So, 2012, a much younger Deputy General Secretary, yeah, that guy, more hair, he led a delegation to bring solidarity to the students and teachers of Chile who were marching and mobilizing to fend off the full privatization of their education system. And it was then that I met a young student organizer named Gabrielle, who was leading the students' movement. Many years passed, and we stayed in touch. And a few years ago, just 2 years ago, I was at UNESCO in Paris representing you and all EI members on the SDG 4 High-Level Steering Committee. And I walked in the room and I heard a familiar voice. Hola, David! In a Chilean accent, if you can imagine. David. It was Gabrielle, past the president of the World Bank, just there past the head of UNICEF, all the way at the end of the table. He was chairing the meeting. And I said, oh my gosh, hola, presidente. Because, colleagues, at that moment, the reason he was chairing that meeting was because he was the president of Chile. It matters what we do. The relationships we build with students matter. That was the students in the street. Next slide, I think, is a picture of him. Yeah, there's Gabrielle with the head of UNESCO. Through our work with the recommendations in the Go Public campaign, our members across Africa, were able to bring their solutions, power, and determination to the headquarters of the African Union in the first ever joint session with unions and ministers in the history of the African Union. Next slide, please. Yeah. For the first time ever, World Teachers' Day was not held at UNESCO headquarters in Paris, but by the African Union in the framework of the Pan-African Conference in Addis. And very relevant to what you were discussing, and I could go long on this, but I'm not going to because I have limited time. In December, we hosted the first EI Global Conference on Artificial Intelligence in Brussels. And we brought together all regions and experts and put together an action plan and decided we needed to set up an AI network. And that AI network is going to meet at the end of this month in Madrid. It's going to be co-hosted with our Spanish members and the Spanish government with President Sanchez at the end of the month. And we're going to establish a collective repository of collective bargaining strategies, research, and union-developed advocacy plans. And I know because of this conversation you're working with our European region, E2CE, but my goal is to get all of the world's regions at the same level so that we can be at the table and that we have the power and we have the wisdom to make sure that whatever goes into schools, whatever data is extracted, we are there, we are regulating, we are watching, and we can either adopt or we can stop. And I was also, well, I should say that AI was at the focus of the latest International Summit on the Teaching Profession that took place in Estonia in March. And he's not here, because he turned bright red, Larry Flanagan. But I wanted to thank him, because after he stopped working with you guys, he came to work with me. And he's been my chief negotiator on the ISDPs, working with the OECD. So let him know that I called him out, please, Andrea. But across all our conversations, one idea keeps resurfacing. Education is and must fundamentally be a human enterprise. It's relational, it's built on trust, it's built on connection, and it reinforces deeper learning through friction and dialogue. And as you look around and see the damage from social media and the emerging evidence about cognitive offloading and the critical need for epistemic clarity in education systems and protecting children from deceptive anthropomorphic AI, we are needed. So that brings us to the next pillar of our strategic plan, public education. As teachers, we defend every child's right to quality education no matter who they are and where they live. We know that only a fully funded public education system led by a strong teaching profession can deliver on this fundamental human right, and we know that our public education systems and our profession are on the brink. When we launched our Go Public Fund Education campaign, we knew we were stepping into a global fight against commercialization and privatization of education. Underfunding was pushing teachers out of classrooms. Austerity was eating away at public systems, and corporate operators were circling ahead, above head, ready to turn our children into steady revenue streams. But we did not give in. We mobilized, we organized, and we resisted. And colleagues, over the last 3 years, I have seen EI member organizations around the world embrace this campaign and make it their own. By the end of this year, Go Public will have a footprint in over 90 countries. That's half of Education International countries. Unions around the world are turning Go Public into victories. Let me give you some examples. In Nepal, after 29 days of peaceful action, teachers won major pay rises, permanent contracts, and a commitment to fund education. In Mongolia, 13 weeks of strike action turned into a, you ready? 50% salary increase for teachers. I mean, when's the last time any of us have ever heard of that? But they didn't just do that. They broadened their scope of bargaining to also increase funding for school meals for their students, for the most vulnerable students. Because when teachers and education support personnel win, the whole system wins. In Iraq, in Zimbabwe, in Uruguay, in Indonesia, unions influenced national budgets, won protection, secured permanent contracts, and rebuilt respect for the profession. Now, these wins didn't make international headlines, but they are making a difference in school communities around the world, and they are building power and momentum for our unions to grow and win. So, people. People are at the heart of everything we do. Human and trade union rights, gender justice, social justice. And nowhere is our solidarity more needed than in places living under siege. So let me talk for a moment about Palestine. I was honored to have Adam join us in January for what we hoped was going to be a historic International Day of Education. But what began as a simple return visit to the teachers of Palestine, and I had been 3 times that past year, in Ramallah for a graduation event and a solidarity conference at the invitation of the General Union of Palestinian Teachers, it turned into a horrific reminder, what Adam said, of Palestinians endure every day. And he eloquently recounted what happened to us. These are 13 leaders from unions who had contributed most generously to our Solidarity Fund for Palestine. You helped keep teachers alive in Gaza and West Bank when the Israelis stopped their pay. You helped to create a lifeline and deep connection for GUPT and all its members, particularly the 1,000 young women teachers we were going to see who have now become trainers in distance learning and trauma-informed pedagogy, as well as organizers. In Palestine, teachers are currently only paid for 3 days a week because of an Israeli hold on the duties and tax revenues owed to the Palestinian Authority. And ironically, Israeli fears of teachers standing in solidarity with Palestinian teachers and students and attempts to intimidate, isolate, or silence us only strengthened our collective determination to continue supporting our brothers and sisters and to amplify the voices of those who, despite a genocidal war and military occupation, continue to teach and to build hope for future generations. EIS, you refuse to look away. So, again, thank you to Adam for coming, and thank you, EIS. Our Palestinian colleagues are reminded that they are not, nor will they ever be alone. And I wanted to say, I was telling the Prime Minister, just the past Prime Minister, Mohammed Shtayyeh, that I was coming here. He's very jealous. He actually wants to come and address you. So if you ever want him, he's one of the best speakers you'll ever have. But he wanted me to say, thank you, EIS. Thank you very much. So let me move on to, those are the teachers, the graduates. Let me move on to Ukraine because I'm conscious of time and I want to move a little bit quicker. So you have also showed the same solidarity over 4 hard years to the colleagues in Ukraine who are fiercely defending their students, their democracy, and their future. And I want to thank you all for your solidarity contributions, which have literally kept the lights on for our members with generators. I'm happy to report that in a couple of months on World Teachers Day, October 5th, you all know that, Ukraine will have its own version of the International Summit on the Teaching Profession to strengthen social and policy dialogue between education unions and the governments at this critical moment. And it is a stunning turnaround because just last year, we were sending protest letters because there was a bill going through the Ukrainian parliament stripping union rights from teachers. And now they're going to agree to have a summit, union ministers together. And it looks like Zelensky himself is going to host us. And I was in Kyiv at the beginning of this week, and it was a very tough week. So my voice is a little hoarse from sleeping in bomb shelters. But I was there to support that process because I believed that was important for us to be there and to show up. And besides the low pay, they're the lowest pay in the OECD in Ukraine. The educators and school leaders continue to endure and persist for their students and their country. They are incredible and they deserve our full support and solidarity. And let me just say one other thing, because I have to. When the Palestinian teachers are going around the world talking, and the Ukrainian teachers, very often they're together. And they speak for each other because they don't want to be instrumentalized against each other. Both are living under attack, and they work very, very closely with each other, and supporting both is very important. So, yeah. So, let me tell you some other, let's go from there to some other good news. Colleagues, our solidarity is making a world of difference, and after about, next slide, 10 years of relentless work from EI member organizations around the world, Esmail Abdi is free from Evin prison and reunited with his family in Germany. And many of you probably know Esmail is the former General Secretary of the Tehran Teachers Trade Association in Iran. He was arrested, and you'll see why this is personal to me. He was arrested in July 2015 to prevent him from coming to our World Congress in Ottawa. He was detained for 10 years. He was tortured. He had hunger strikes. He organized the workers. The guards told him, "Your family, we know where they are." And so I got a phone call. "David, are you a father?" "Yes." "I need your help." Well, how would I do that? And then I remembered, I'm not alone. I have members in Iraq. We have members in Iraq, in Turkey, in Germany. We have resources more than we can imagine. And I can't tell you how we did it, but the family got out, and Ismail also got out. And just 2 days ago, I took him to meet the Director General of the International Labor Organization at the International Labor Conference in Geneva. It's been a busy week. And he also condemned the United States, rightly, for its bombing campaign of schools and threatening to wipe out their entire civilization. And I wanted to also share some good news that our French teachers from FO, France, are now safe, because on April 8th, we were delighted to hear of their release from Iranian prison. They had been held for 4 years. They were told they were spies from Education International and held for 4 years in solitary confinement. They will be at our executive board in November, and if you go on our website, you can read a letter about their story and what all the support has meant. Another piece of good news, the ICJ, the International Court of Justice decision, I'm sure you're all following that, on the right to strike. Last month, the court reaffirmed our right to strike and confirmed that it is protected under Convention number 87 of the International Labor Organization. And this decision asserts what education unions have long defended, that freedom of association is meaningless without the power to act collectively, without the right to strike. And maybe it's not that big of a deal here in Scotland, but let me tell you, that's the difference between life and death around the world now. So that's a big win. And now for the final P I want to talk to you about, planet. 1 in 6 children now live in a conflict zone. Millions are displaced by climate disasters. Schools are flooded, burned, and destroyed. And yet, governments tell us there is no money to prevent or mitigate. To put the climate emergency into context, in 2024, we witnessed school closures due to extreme weather in South Sudan, Philippines, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, US, and Canada. Over 210 million children lost crucial days of schooling in just April and May alone due to extreme heat. And there is money. It's sitting in the accounts of billionaires paying less tax than the teachers who are in front of me right now. And according to new data, yes. And according to new data released by the International Peace Bureau, global military spending now reaches almost $3 trillion a year. $3 trillion. So while military budgets expand, education spending worldwide is declining. And this is the sustained diversion of public wealth away from the classroom and towards the battlefield. Colleagues, peace must be union business, because we know at the center of every conflict we witness, whether in Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, Lebanon, Iran, Myanmar, or the DRC, it's also an assault on education. Schools are bombed, teachers displaced, children traumatized, entire communities fall apart. As a global education union movement, we commit ourselves to building a world where a child's classroom is never a target, where a teacher's courage is supported, and where the wisdom of our profession becomes a guiding force for peace, democracy, and human dignity. Education does not exist in a vacuum. It was just said here. Wars and conflicts, the deterioration of democracies around the world, and the climate crisis affect each and every one of us. As unionists, we must use our collective power to fight against the far right, who count on inaction and actively build the world we want. As educators, we must educate and inform citizenry and champion a pedagogy of solidarity, of peace and hope to build the world we need. From here, I am next heading to Greenland for the EI Education and Solidarity Summit with Greenland, and that's going to take place next week in Nuuk. We're going there to show our solidarity with EMAC, the Greenland Teachers Union, and stand with them and the people of Greenland against Trump's threats. We've got about 100 people coming, all over the world. And they are rightly a proud people who, despite being part of a colonial kingdom, have an autonomous government and education system, and a history of exploitation and oppression that they still very much remember. Sound familiar? As education unionists, we never stand alone. Colleagues, let me conclude with thanking you for your leadership, your solidarity, and your unwavering commitment to education workers across borders. EIS is a valued and respected member of Education International and ETUCE, and the power you build through your fight for the tools, time, and trust your members expect and deserve, the increased pay, the reduced workload, and the improved well-being, that makes you better able to power our universal struggle for our profession, our public education, our people, and yes, our planet. Solidarity, EIS, and if I may, no Scotland, no party. Thank you.